Hey Winxers! Once again, happy 20 years of Winx Club, everybody! Today I'm making a video that was requested quite a while back. We're making a Winx Club villain tier list. Yay! I did limit this to just the main series, movies, and World of Winx just to make things easier on myself, but there is still a lot of ground to cover. I think it's going to be pretty fun, and if you'd like to try out this tier list yourself, I'll have a link to it in the description. As a quick heads up, the audio will probably be different on this one compared to my other videos, since I need to record my screen, so my microphone setup is a little bit different. But other than that, let's go ahead and dive right in. First up, right off the bat, we already have a character that I have quite a bit to say about. I always forget that Acheron exists. He's supposed to be the biggest villain of Season 5, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who always forgets him. For those of you who need a reminder, Acheron is a sorcerer who wants to rule the magic universe. Sound familiar? He created the Legendarium, which is a book full of mythical creatures that can be summoned into the real world, which on paper is pretty cool. We don't know why, as far as I know at least, but somehow he became trapped in its pages, and he uses Selina to free him by promising her great power. Now, the reason why this villain is so forgettable is because of the fact that he kind of just sits back and tells Selina what to do most of the time, and he only physically appears in an episode once because he spends the entire time being trapped inside a book. The only thing that makes us remember that he exists is Selina saying his name like 5 times an episode for some reason. But besides that, he has very little presence in the series whatsoever. And on top of that, he has the lamest defeat ever in the history of anything. And I don't really think that's much of an exaggeration. I rewatched the episode where he fights off against the Winx just to make sure. But yeah, it's pretty bad. So basically, there's a big fight between the Winx and Acheron, but for the most part, he's kind of just doing his own thing, just floating there for the first few minutes, just being how he's been the entire series, someone who lives in Selina's shadow. And then he decides to raise the stakes, and this leads to a one-on-one battle with Bloom, which I think is already kind of a weird choice. This is Bloom that we're talking about, who does not need any extra screen time at this point, and this is the only fight they have with Acheron, so the fact that they made it be a one-on-one battle, regardless of who it is, that was just a bad idea. And then on top of that, the battle itself only lasts 3 minutes, and I am not kidding you when I say that. I counted. All that happens is they shoot some generic beams back and forth, and then Bloom runs off and hides. And then Acheron acts like a kid that's been thrown into a super mall without any supervision and has no idea what to do. He is baffled by this tactic. And then, when he's trying to figure out where she went, Bloom sneaks up behind him and opens a box that traps him inside it. And that's how he's defeated. I cannot begin to describe how much of a waste this was. It is the quickest battle I've seen with someone who's supposed to be so fearful and frightening that I have ever seen in my entire life. I cannot believe that he fell for such an elementary trick. My God, it's really bad, guys. And he just does not feel frightening at all because of like everything I've already said. He barely does anything. He was defeated in such a lame and stupid way. I think his design's okay, kind of generic. Yeah, this is kind of unfortunate, but I think our first villain that we have here kind of has to go in D tier. I can think of no other place for a villain this sad and pathetic, unfortunately. Luckily, though, we have an actually good villain in order to balance things out coming up here. Next up is the Ancestral Witches. These are probably the biggest and baddest villains within the universe of Winx Club because of just how big an impact that they've had, and the fact that parents and magics use the Ancestral Witches as a way to get their children to behave by scaring them. This is how big an impact that they've had on this world. So, once again, a quick recap. They destroyed Domino while trying to obtain the Dragon Flame. And I completely forgot this until I looked into it, but apparently they were doing this because they were working for Darkar, who is basically this universe's version of Satan, I guess. I don't know. He is the incarnation of evil, and they were working for him at the time. The Ancestral Witches also created Valtor, a very big name in the Winx Club universe, and they're the one who sent him to conquer all of the magic dimension for their reputation. They wanted to destroy the universe, and it's kind of vague, but I believe they were the creator of Witches in Winx Club, which once again aren't inherently evil, but there have been quite a few bad apples and actors that have made a name for themselves, including some others that we'll come to later. Not only did they do all of this, but when they were finally caught by the Company of Light, they dragged Oratel with them. They would not go down without a fight. And then, that's not even the end of everything. When they were in Obsidian, they tortured what was left of Domino's residents who were also with them. And something that happened a little bit before they were captured, I completely forgot about this, but we learn in the second movie that they turned Arendor against the Company of Light by destroying an entire city in order to threaten him to work for them, which is pretty diabolical if you ask me. And this is something that's a little bit debatable because the Winx Club canon likes to change things here and there, but they quote unquote killed Daphne. It really depends on which interpretation of the story you're going for, but regardless, they did something awful to her. So yeah, that is a long resume of evil that these guys have. It took a while just to remember all the horrible things that they've done because there's so many, and all of them were pretty diabolical. So in terms of just being pure evil, they probably do not have a rival within the Winx Club universe. They don't do as psychologically horrible things as some of the other characters we get into, but in terms of just overall pedigree, there is no one more evil within the Winx Club universe. So because of that, without much of any surprise to anyone, they're gonna have to go S. Okay, up next, we have our first nemesis from World of Winx. I was kind of unsure of whether I should include these or not because I was trying to follow like a general guideline for characters to qualify for this. Wanted them to have a name, have some sort of impact on the Winx negatively, and preferably also have lines, but some of the nemesis have lines and some don't. Banshee, I believe, either doesn't talk that much or doesn't have any lines. But regardless, I figured the nemesis in World of Winx were just iconic enough that they should make the list, even if it kind of makes them a bit of an outlier. So first off, we have Banshee. Unfortunately, I don't think we're starting very strong with this category of villains. I absolutely love all the designs for the nemesis in World of Winx. They did a terrific job, and Banshee is no exception. However, that's about all I can say for Banshee. She definitely has this really good creep factor to her, but when I was trying to figure out what exactly she did, really all she did was kind of annoy Musa and was a minor hindrance to her. And that's really about it. Nothing too special stood out. So in terms of the impact she had, unfortunately, one of the lower ones on this list. I do really like the design, but I don't really think that can save the ranking for Banshee, unfortunately. So I think for now, at least, I might shuffle things around a bit. I'll do D tier as well for this one. Okay, man, we cannot catch a break here. Up next, we have the very first villain within the series that made me, actually slap my head because of how dumbfounded I was when I first saw him. And I know that I am not alone in that. Before we knew anything about Winx Club Season 7, I was relatively optimistic. Probably because this was before I realized how much of kind of a downward spiral we were taking, with a few exceptions. But yeah, there was a downward trend, and we're probably still in it, but maybe, just maybe, the new season will be able to push us out. But anyways, when the teaser came out, I was optimistic until I saw Brafilius. The second I saw his goofy face and demeanor, and the way that they portrayed him essentially like a villain in a literal preschool show, I lost any hope that I had for the new season immediately, and he became my most hated character within the entire Winx Club universe. And when I was going through the comments, there are a lot of people who felt the same way. Everything was going swell until we saw Brafilius, and then we knew what we were in for. There really isn't too much to his character. He's Kalshara's brother, who's the main villain in Season 7. He's characterized as dumb, a coward, and bad at spells. And the only reason why he works for Kalshara and eventually the Trix, spoilers here, I don't think anyone cares though, it's only because he's afraid of them. So really, he's a minion, but at the absolute worst that we could possibly see in the series. So I don't think there's much of a surprise when I say he's gonna go in D tier. You know what, as forgettable as Acheron was, I still think he at least felt like a villain, just a bad one, whereas Brafilius did not. So to the bottom he goes. Okay, finally, some better characters. Up next, we have Chimera. I am absolutely in love with her design. When I first saw her pop up on screen, I thought she was like the prettiest character in the entire series, but unfortunately, looks are not everything. The second she opened her mouth, my opinion of her tanked. But in this case, that's kind of a good thing. Chimera is daughter to Countess Cassandra. All that we really know of her is her personality. She's really rude, goes to Beta Academy, which I really wanted to learn more about, but we didn't. And she doesn't like Stella or the Winx. And that's pretty much it in terms of backstory for Chimera, but just purely because of design and how iconic she is, she goes down, for me at least, as one of the most memorable of villains in Winx Club, and she did do something pretty evil as well. Chimera was being used by her mother, but she did have a lot of agency. She was totally down with everything that she did. And there was one thing that she did of her own accord, which was awful. She is the one who transforms Stella into a monster, which sends Stella spiraling down this horrible, just roller coaster of emotions, and it gets an entire arc because of just how badly it affects her. It was Cassandra's plan to put all of this into action, but at the end of the day, it was Chimera who cast that curse on her. So, simply because of how much I like her, just because how big an impact she made on me and my memory, I think I'm gonna go pretty high. Definitely not on the same level, obviously, as the Ancestral Witches. She didn't do that much bad. Really, she was just kind of like a bully with superpowers, but that thing that she did to Stella did lead to some pretty dark stuff. So because of that, I am going to go A. And now we have Countess Cassandra. So, Cassandra is part of the royal court of Celeria and was highly respected. She was almost married to King Radius, even though she didn't love him. She was just using him for power. Which, if we're just going off of that, it really isn't anything too special. She's just a corrupt politician. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. However, when she was given the opportunity for power from Valtor, she takes it, even though that means giving him access to the second son of Celeria, which is such an important thing for not only Celeria, but the entire Magic's universe. It throws everything into chaos and leads into Cassandra trying to take over and rule Celeria with an iron fist. And she does so in the most vindictive way possible, I would say. During the whole Stella thing that I mentioned, although it was Chimera who cursed Stella, it was Cassandra who enchanted Radius so that he wouldn't even recognize his own daughter, and then he ended up sending his guards on a witch hunt after Stella, which is horribly, horribly traumatic. I cannot imagine what that must have been like for Stella. And even when she manages to kick out Stella and essentially rule over the kingdom using Radius as a pawn, she is awful to him as well. During a dragon attack, she leaves Radius to die so that Chimera and her can escape. So yeah, although she started off as nothing more than a sketchy politician, Cassandra ended up doing a lot of damage within the story of Winx Club. And on top of that, she has a lovely design and is just really memorable for me. So I'm gonna have to go A for her as well. But I think I am putting her above Chimera because she did way more and was the mastermind at the end of the day. Okay, up next we have Dark Avalon. I really wasn't sure whether I should split up Darkar into his true form and this form. However, I decided to because in the original series, you see them in the same room. So there are two different entities, and we do learn that Darkar created this shadow clone, who I'm naming Dark Avalon to make things simple, in order to orchestrate his grand plan. I didn't see the special, but from what I saw, I think they just made Dark Avalon a different form for Darkar in the Nick version, so they weren't two separate beings, but in the original, they were. So I decided to add him since he and Darkar do two completely different things. So as a recap, Dark Avalon is from Season 2. He's a copy of Avalon, a professor that works at Althea that Darkar created in order to sniff out pieces of the Codex. Avalon is essentially Darkar's eyes and does his bidding, but seems to be a really intelligent and crafty because I don't think Darkar really instructed him to do much besides gain the trust of the Winx and find the Codex. It was up to Dark Avalon to do whatever he wanted in order to get that done. And he really did some messed up stuff in order to fulfill the commandments from his master. So this is far from the most evil thing he did, but to start off, he is the one who created the homesickness spell on the pixies so that they would reveal the location of the Codex that he wanted to find. But that's the most tame thing that he's done. The main thing that he did that people remember him for is he ended up grooming Bloom in order to turn her into Dark Bloom. He isolated her from the rest of the Winx, made her feel special, gained her trust, and then when he finally had it, he's the one who initiates the start of Bloom's dark transformation. This is a really interesting case for a villain because although he has superpowers, I feel like he's probably the most realistic in terms of what he does because of the fact that his biggest crime is something that legitimately happens in the real world and is more common than it should be. And the fact that it was also in a relatively young age demographic show kind of adds fuel to everything. I remember I was pretty darn young when I saw season 2 for the first time. I was probably only 9 or 10. So I can't remember exactly how I felt about him, but I do remember that I initially was kind of like living through Bloom, because back then I really liked having attention and just praise given to me from people who are older than me, like in settings such as school, since I just liked feeling accomplished and appreciated for the work that I did. So I was kind of in Bloom's shoes as well. I could tell that there was something off, obviously, but I didn't know what. And when he finally officially revealed himself to Bloom, that was a huge, huge shock to me, since I didn't even realize that that form of manipulation was something that was possible. And I feel like that's probably a really good thing, writing-wise. It is something that is really reminiscent to horrible things that go down in the real world, but I do think the way that they did it separated it enough where you understood it, but it wasn't too overbearing, and it is an important lesson to learn. You should be careful who you trust. And I really like the wings that they gave him and the fact that they went with a paladin look. However, that's kind of attributed mostly to Avalon, the professor. Really, all they did for Dark Avalon was, let's see, they sharpened his teeth, added markings on his face, and thickened his eyebrows. That's pretty much about it. So it's not too creative in terms of just Dark Avalon himself compared to regular Avalon, but just overall, I'm pretty sure Avalon left a huge impression on us and taught us a very important lesson. So because of that, I think I'm gonna go A. I am not going S purely because of the fact that although he did all those horrible, horrible things, it was Darkar who commanded him to go in that direction in the first place. So A it is. Okay, speak of the devil, we have Dark Bloom, who is in another tier list I made. But this time, we're talking about her as an evil force. So Dark Bloom, obviously, as I just mentioned, was corrupted by Dark Avalon. Although I think Darkar finished the transformation, I didn't rewatch the season. I just found what I could on wikis and watched clips here and there, but that's what I believe happened. In terms of the evil things that Dark Bloom does, not as serious as some of the other characters on here. She stole a piece of the codex and was just a general threat to the Winx. Really, she just did whatever Darkar wanted, and after a certain point, she doesn't really talk anymore. They just make her like growl and stuff, which I thought was kind of weird. I did forget about something though that was pretty cool about her transformation. It happened over time. It wasn't immediate. So Bloom would randomly start turning into Dark Bloom and causing havoc. And she slowly came to the realization that she was becoming a danger to the people around her and could do nothing about it. That's a really, really clever idea and ended up being properly creepy. Once again, similar to Dark Avalon, they really didn't do too much to change her design in order to make her a dark fairy. However, it works really, really well. There's a reason why there's so much fan art of Dark Bloom, and she just lives on in our minds, even after almost 20 years. So for Dark Bloom, I think I'm also going to go A with her, mainly because of the fact that she is just super iconic, and also the idea behind her transformation is cool, but really she didn't do anything too crazy on the evil scale. All right, up next we have the Dark Fairies, another group of characters that was on my previous tier list. So I wasn't sure if I should include this or not, since I also included Mitzi, but I figured since her being a fairy along with her friends is such a different dynamic that I'd separate the two. Really, there isn't too much to say about this group of fairies. Mitzi and her friends were granted powers from the Wizards of the Black Circle in order to ruin the Winx's reputation as fairies, because in Season 4, they have Belief X powers, which are powered by how people feel about fairies. So they decided to tank the reputation that fairies had in order to weaken them. And They're only in one episode, and that is the only purpose that they serve. And they even wiped their memories after they went back to normal for some reason. So it's as if it never happened, really. They don't have too grand of a defeat similar to Acheron. They are defeated when people believe in fairies being good, and that's it. So yeah, not too much to say in terms of the damage that they did to the Winx. They were simply a hindrance. However, I think I am going to put them higher than D, simply because I really love their designs and the concept of dark fairies. I really want to see Rainbow do even more with them in the future. So for that, I'm going to put them in C. All right, we have another big one, guys. It's Darkar from season 2. So I'm just gonna go through a list of all the evil things he did that I could find and remember. So we've already been through this. He sends a shadow clone to Althea in order to get Bloom and the Codex. He's the one who finalizes Bloom's dark transformation. His motivation is that he wants the ultimate power, presumably to rule over magics. He tortures people. He tortures the pixies, which we can see. And in my darkest moments of Winx video, there's a frame that I found where you just see pixie clothes floating in one of the prisons, which seems to imply that he destroyed at least one pixie, which is pretty horrible since they're supposed to be the equivalent of like kittens and puppies in our world. And presumably he also tortures the real Avalon. We see him in chains and he does not look so good. Darkar's power is opposite to Bloom's, so that's the reason why he kind of wants to have her around. And then I don't remember this, but when I was researching, it said that he was master to the Ancestral Witches who did terrible things that had lasting impacts for years and years to come. Darkar is like the incarnation of evil in this universe, so he definitely qualifies to be high ranking on this list. And because of the fact that he commanded the Ancestral Witches, he's also indirectly responsible for Daphne's death. Air quotes here because it really depends, but death. And probably the most grievous thing that he did that I recently discovered while rewatching for my, I think it was the second part to my Darkest Moments of Winx video, is that when he did get Bloom on his side, to my memory, he claims that he plans on making her his consort, which is ew, gross, horrible, and just makes him an even more intimidating and just evil figure. So yeah, I think we have another S tier, guys. I can't really think of any other place to put him. He looks cool. He's terrifying. He did horrible things both directly and indirectly. And I think the part that stands out about him the most is the fact that some of the evil things he does aren't directly stated. They're kind of implied. So it's easy to miss, especially when you're younger. But upon rewatching, you realize all the horrible things he did. So S tier for sure. Okay, up next we have Kalshara. She comes from what I believe to be the worst season of Winx Club, personally. But when I was rereading everything about her, I do not think she's on the same level as Brafilius. I'll go over some of the information about her. She can shapeshift into any animal. She's a fairy animal tamer. Before, I would have put her in D tier, no questions asked, simply because I hate this season so much, and I don't really think she's that great a villain. However, I think that's being too harsh. I think she has a really cool design. In theory, her plan is actually really cool. She wants to control all of the fairy animals in order to take over magics. And if handled with better writing, I think it'd be really, really terrifying seeing all these animals of all sorts completely destroy everything. And I do sort of take her seriously. The bar is low, but yeah, at least compared to Brafilius. So because of that, I do not think I can put her on the same tier. And I do think she's better than Acheron because of the fact that she had more screen time. I sort of understood what she was doing and took her seriously. And I just like her better than Acheron. Acheron is horrible. So because of that, I'm going to go C. Up next, we have Knut. Once again, I was not sure whether I should include him or not, but I do think he is on like the same level as some of the other characters, even though he does get redeemed in the end. So Knut, if you didn't know, is an ogre who worked for the Trix in season 1, but eventually he ended up working as a janitor for Althea. The Trix would always insult him constantly and wouldn't let him wear his glasses even though he needed them desperately. Poor guy. It's not really clear why he works for them, probably because they're just more powerful, but he does ditch them and do the right thing when the Trix end up summoning the Army of Darkness. There isn't really too much to say about Knut. I have nostalgic feelings towards him simply because he is part of the first season, but if I watched the show without ever seeing it before, I think he'd probably be annoying to me. He's just the bumbling, idiotic character type, not much different from Brafilius. However, he is more likable than Brafilius. There was never a moment when I liked Brafilius, and he was constantly making very, very, very stupid jokes. And I just hated whenever he was on screen. Whereas I don't think I'd feel quite as strongly about Knut, even if I cut out the nostalgia factor. I definitely am going to put him above Brafilius. And this might get some heat for me in the comments, but I think I'm going to put him above Acheron just because of the fact that Knut, he fulfilled his role well. He was never meant to be the big villain of the series. He was simply a minion, and he did well. And he was even kind of scary at some points. With Acheron, I was never scared, ever. And he did not fulfill his role as the big villain. So because of that, I think Knut is better. So I'm gonna go low C. Up next, we have Mandragora, yet another character I forgot existed. If you're like me, here's a quick recap. She's from the first movie. She is the keeper of the Obsidian Circle, whatever that means. And she ended up kind of being used by the Ancestral Witches. They gave her their power so that she could free them and find the remaining dragonfire. She doesn't really do too much else besides that, but she is the one who mind controls Riven. Again, he gets hypnotized. And when he's under her control, this is when he stabs Misa. It's really more of a slash if you look at the animation, but they purposely made it ambiguous, so I'm just gonna say stab. And towards the end, she gets possessed by the Ancestral Witches and used like a vessel, similar to Puppet Zelda, if you're familiar with the Legend of Zelda series. She didn't really do anything too crazy, although she did indirectly almost kill Musa, which is a big score on the tally board, I guess, but she's super forgettable. I totally forgot she existed until I looked at the villain list for Winx Club. So because of that, I'm gonna go high C for Mandragora. Up next, we have the one, the only, Mitzi. Yay! Oh my god. Okay, so Mitzi really is not much more than a typical high school bully. However, I had to include her because of just how iconic she is in the series. And then she does also have a negative impact on the Winx multiple times, just not on the same level as some of the other characters. So what we know about Mitzi is she hates Bloom for some reason with a burning passion, which, you can dislike someone, but she goes out of her way to show how much she doesn't like Bloom. She's also from Gardenia, is wealthy, and besides the Dark Fairy fiasco, she also created an elaborate prank on Halloween just to humiliate Bloom and her friends. which is kind of diabolical. Small scale, but still. I think that's pretty much about all she did, so not nearly as evil as some of the other characters on this list. She was kind of annoying in season 4, though. She's trying to steal Brandon. I was gonna say B just because I like her, but she does get annoying at times, and once again, not as big a scale as some of the other stuff done. So I guess C. Okay, finally another World of Winx nemesis. Now we have Obscura, who also made an appearance on one of my darkest moments of Winx videos. Obscura is Stella's nemesis, and she uses illusions in order to basically take her out emotionally. She makes Stella relive childhood memories when she was bullied, makes Stella feel worthless, and it's shown how she likes to corner her victims and show them their darkest fears and insecurities, which is a really cool thing for a villain to do and definitely has impact. So I think because of that, Obscura is really high on my list in terms of nemesis. What she did was pretty darn messed up, even though it was on a smaller scale. So I think I'm gonna go C for her. She also has a great design. I love it so much. Really, she didn't do anything too horrible. Technically, you could get a similar kind of treatment in the real world, and it was resolved pretty quickly, but the intent was really malicious, and I think she just made a pretty big impact on me personally, so high C. And now time for another really, really, really bad character. I mentioned previously how the second I saw Brafilius in the season 7 trailer, I lost all hope that I had. And the same thing happened to me with Obscurum in season 8, only worse. I don't know how you can go worse than Brafilius, but here we are. Like, I guess I will say that I think Brafilius's voice is more annoying than Obscurum's, but I think that's the only thing that Obscurum has going for him at this point. Obscurum somehow helped revive Valtor, which was horrible. We should have left him be. He pledges his loyalty to Valtor. This is not his original form. He was transformed by Valtor as thanks, I guess. Spoilers for season 8, by the way. I doubt you care, but here you go. He wanted to take the throne of Lumenia from his sister because he's originally King Argan, brother to Dorana, and he was just jealous of her, and that's his main motivation. I'm not going to spend too much time on this character because he does not deserve it for pretty darn obvious reasons. I do not like his character at all. It made the show so juvenile whenever he was on screen. He was not frightening in the least. And I didn't give it much thought, but someone in my comments mentioned how it really looks like they meshed a bunch of stereotypes for Middle Eastern people for his design. I can't say with 100% certainty that that is the case, but that is certainly what it looks like to me after hearing that. And I just do not like him at all. So because of that, he is the bottom of the barrel, the worst of the worst. Next up is Politea. I did not remember too much about her character. I had to read through her wiki extensively and watch some clips to remind myself. She's a nymph of Cyrenix, was one of the 9 nymphs of Magix along with Daphne, and her main thing is that she didn't help Daphne when being cursed by the Ancestral Witches, and in the end, they both got cursed by the witches. Politea became a monster, and her Cyrenix power turned evil as well. I really don't have too much else to say about her character because I haven't seen the movie that she's in yet, and she didn't leave that big an impression on me when she was in season 5. I guess that I at least take her seriously as a villain. She had an intimidating voice, but really did not leave an impression on me, like, at all. So because of that, I think I'm gonna go C. Up next, we have Princess Amentia, which some of you might not count as a villain, but I am going to. She's from Season 2, is the Princess of Downland, and she tries to force Brandon to marry her, and while doing so, she harasses him. And because he liked Stella, she tried to force Stella out of the sun, which is something that will kill Stella. She does end up helping the Winx later, but yeah, she did a good deal of damage. She, legitimately harassed Brandon in a not cool way. And she also, I don't know if she knew, she probably just didn't care, but she almost killed Stella as well. So, because of that, I'd say that she has a pretty decent impact. I also found the concept of Downland really interesting. It was something I wanted to see more of because of just how fantastical it all felt and different from anything that I've ever seen before. I did originally have her in B in my notes here, but I'm gonna go high C for now. B is empty at this point, so I'm probably gonna shift things around, but that's just how I'm feeling right now. Okay, Diaspro, let's go. So I think pretty much everyone here knows who Princess Diaspro is. She was originally the arranged fiancé for Sky. She's also the Fairy of Gemstones, and really is just kind of spoiled and rude. That's kind of most of what we know about her. However, although she was indeed mistreated by Sky, Sky never told her that he had feelings for Bloom, and in a way kind of led both Bloom and Diaspro on and deceived them both. Yes, this was because he was under his father's control, but yeah, things could have gone better. So I do feel bad for Diaspro on that front. And I've already mentioned how I absolutely love her design. It is so gorgeous. But she ends up going really, really loony later on. You can argue whether or not that's in character for her, and if it was just the writers trying to make her seem evil, but it's what happens. She allies herself with the Trix and attempts to throw Bloom into the vortex of flames, which is straight up attempted murder. She also enchants Sky so that she can have him to herself, which is really messed up. She also abuses political power just to get in between Sky and Bloom. So yeah, although once again, she's kind of just like that high school bully trope, sort of, she ends up doing legitimately horrible and awful crimes that she should have paid for, but didn't for some reason. But she lives on in her memory because of just how big an impact she makes on everyone and how great her design is. So because of that, I think I'm gonna actually put her in A. Up next, we have the Queen of Neverland. There will probably end up being World of Winx spoilers here, so you've been warned, guys. So, Queen, as I believe she's referred, is actually Tinkerbell, who became corrupted after Peter Pan, her unrequited love, left for Wendy. She then becomes the Queen of Neverland, or the World of Dreams, and ends up just going on a rampage of anger because of all this. She uses shadows to work for her and is kidnapping people with talent in order to steal their abilities. And she also turns Neverland into a world of nightmares. And she's also the one who creates the Nemesis, who are shadow counterparts to the Winx and are meant to destroy them. I absolutely love the Queen's design. It is so good. I have a soft spot for dark Victorian looks, and this itches that so good. Yeah, I don't remember too much about her besides the fact that I think they did a really good job with incorporating Peter Pan elements into her and the World of Dreams in general. And I just kind of have a soft spot for her. And I did take her seriously. So I think for just design alone, I'm gonna go A, guys. I can't help it. So good. Up next, we have Rumpelstiltskin, who is another character I debated on putting on here, but I think you'll understand why I ended up adding him in just a second here. So Rumpelstiltskin is from season 6. He's a character that was resurrected from the Legendarium. He's immune to magic and very deceitful. So he's essentially no match for the Winx. In an effort to, I guess, allude to the Little Mermaid, the writers chose to make him steal Musa's voice, and then he ran off to the Legendarium world. Because he's immune to magic, the only thing the Winx can do is offer him something in return for her voice. So they get the Legendarium key for him, but they have a time limit to do so because he's just so whimsical and chaotic, I guess. And that's not the last that we see of him. He's also the one who gave the Winx the Infinity Box that traps Acheron in exchange for the Legendarium key once they're done with it. I included him because of the fact that, one, the Winx cannot do anything to him, and also the fact that he stole Musa's voice when music is such an important part of her life was really, really heartbreaking. And yet again, another thing that made it to one of my darkest moments of Winx videos. So although he's only in a few episodes, doesn't do too much, he is a purely evil ball of chaos. So I think he's going to be our first B tier because he's nothing too special, but he is pretty interesting at least and had a major impact on Musa. Okay, up next is Selina. Selina was originally Bloom's childhood friend and also a fairy, which is kind of weird because I thought Roxy was supposed to be the only fairy on Earth, but whatever. She was originally Eldora's pupil, but she left because she wanted stronger magic. She becomes the keeper of the Legendarium and tries to free Acheron in exchange for power. And she also works for the Trix so that they can teach her dark magic. She is redeemed at the end, however, she is leagues above Acheron. She's actually a likable character, has a great design, is interesting, and was the actual true villain of season 6. I'm really sad that we didn't get to see more of Selina. The writing really was not kind to anyone in this season, but she was one of the few bright spots. So for that alone, plus with the design that I really love, I am gonna give her A tier. Okay. Up next, we have Shaman, who is a character from World of Winx and really is just a lackey for the queen. He's the one who kidnaps talented victims for her. There really is not too much to say about this character. He's just a minion, and that's about it. He at least isn't on the same level as Brafilius and Obscurum. Actually take him seriously, and he's not a joke. I'm not really qualified to say how good a job they did on adapting his design, since clearly they were trying to go for a Native American look because of the fact that that's so big in Peter Pan. However, all the elements are there in a way that, at least from an artist standpoint, is kind of interesting to me. But really, he's just kind of there. So I'm going to have to go C for him. He's not laughable to me like Acheron, but there really isn't much to be said about him either. Okay, up next is a character that I think the wiki forgot about in their villain tier list, but I remembered just barely. So we don't get any name for this character besides Shaman Witch. A lot of you might not be familiar because she's only in, I think, one episode in season 8, but in my opinion, she was the only true villain in that season and made a huge impact with the little screen time that she had. So this is going to spoil big things about season 8, so just know. She is the one who conquers Diamond, which is Icy's home. She just suddenly appears and freezes the entire planet. She also turns Icy's sister into a fox when she refuses to tell the Shaman Witch where their castle is. This is what causes Icy to seek power in the first place because she's intimidated by the Shaman Witch and ends up betraying her own people and kingdom because of this. And now her sister is trapped as a fox seemingly forever. So this sends her on a quest in order to turn her little sister back to normal and to basically avenge her kingdom. I do think that the sympathetic villain thing is overdone, and I don't know if it fits with the Trix. However, this was still the best part of season 8 for me because it was at least interesting, and the Shaman Witch was legitimately intimidating and threatening, something that I did not expect from this season at all. She only had a few minutes of screen time, but left a massive impression. And I also just really like her design. I found out from the wiki that her design is based on a singer from a folk music band. I'll put that on screen. The inspiration is very, very clear. However, I do think that they added enough where you can say that it's inspiration and not a complete ripoff. And I just really love the look of it. So because of the fact that Shaman Witch has a great design and actually left a major impression, I am gonna have to go A. Up next, we have Sinka, another nemesis from World of Winx. She's Aisha's nemesis, and she feeds off of her energy. She was shown to taunt her a lot and seems to treat everything like a game. And that's pretty much everything I got from her. Didn't make as big an impression on me compared to the other nemesis, but at least better than Banshee, in my opinion. She also has a super cool design. I'm not going to really waste your guys' time here or mine since my voice is tired, so I'm just going to go C. Up next, we have Smee, who's from World of Winx. Again, this was a character that I sort of forgot about, but I remembered when I was researching for this video. So Smee is kind of just who you'd expect him to be. He's the same character that he is in Peter Pan mythology. He works for Captain Hook, and in this case is sort of like a double agent between Hook and the evil queen. And that's pretty much all there is to him. He's kind of threatening, but he's still like a really clumsy and goofy guy. So, yeah. Honestly, there isn't too much to his character. He wasn't offensively bad to me like some others, and he did do his job well. So, because of that, I think I shall go C. Up next, we have Stoney, who is Flora's nemesis. This one, I think, is a bit more memorable than the other nemesis because she does something that really stuck with me. So she's the opposite to Flora, so instead of giving life, she takes it away. So she petrifies the plant life around her, which in turn damages Flora incredibly. Not only that, but she also has it out for Matt too. She almost buries him alive by creating an avalanche, and she also petrifies him and turns him into stone, which is pretty morbid. She's kind of similar to Medusa, I guess, and feels like the perfect counterpart for our lovely and healing Flora. So top that all off with a great design, and I think she's actually a pretty good villain. She was only in, I think, 1, maybe 2 episodes, so not too much of an impact, but I think she did her job really well. So I am going to put her in B. Okay, up next, the moment a lot of you have probably been waiting for is the Trix. Now, this is kind of a, for lack of a better word, tricky one because they're kind of different in each season that they're in, and they're in like practically every single season of the show. But for me personally, I decided to base it on the best that they had to offer us. So the Trix need no introduction, but here goes anyways. They're a trio of witches who want the dragon flame. Some of the evil stuff they did included sending a witch hunt after Musa when she slaps Stormy, trapping and cornering Bloom on multiple occasions, holding Bloom's parents hostage, and Stella as well at one point. They summon an army of darkness to take over magics. They send a creepy and disturbing nightmare monster that gives people their deepest fears after the Winx, and later on they kind of just become minions for future villains, which is really depressing because these guys had such a big impact and were a huge part of what made Winx Club Winx Club. They were perfect villains for the show and did their job incredibly. If I were to rate them on their entire impact on the series as a whole, it would probably go down a bit just because I really do think that they just got worse over time, not by any fault of their own, but just from the writing itself. However, because there's some really great villains on here that started off amazing, but were completely ruined over time, I'm deciding to look at the best of what they have to offer. And because of that, there is no other place for them but S tier, unsurprisingly. Okay. Now for the very first villain that I absolutely hated in Winx Club. We have Tritannus from season 5 of the show. So as a quick recap, Tritannus is Aisha's cousin, and he is really upset that his brother Nereus is treated so much better and is going to get the throne. So he decides to go against his family, which lands him in prison. But he's not there for very long because he becomes mutated from the pollutants from Earth, which gives him the form that we see now. After getting this newfound power, he frees the Trix and decides that he wants to rule the magic dimension with Icy. So he steals powers from Selkies in order to access the infinite ocean, which will give him the power to do this takeover. Honestly, I think his setup is really good and has tons of potential. I think someone using all of the realm's magical oceans in order to travel across great distances and universes in order to take over the entire world is really cool. And I think having a fish creature on paper sounds nice, but in action, Tritannus is the most laughable villain here in terms of wasted potential. He doesn't scare me in the slightest. I think it's mainly his voice in the English version. To me, it sounds a lot like Bryce Papenbrook. He is the voice for Cat Noir and Eren in Attack on Titan. And that style of voice really does not suit this character at all. I cannot take him seriously with the way that he sounds like a really nasally and bratty, like 13-year-old or something. And on top of that, his whole relationship with Icy was really uncomfortable and made me want to run out of the room screaming every single time that they flirted, which was a lot. And yeah, Tritannus just isn't memorable in terms of the evil things that he did. He definitely had big plans, but he didn't do anything that made me think, whoa, that was really evil. Not once. And yeah, he's just a bratty kid at the end of the day. It's really depressing because I think he could have been a really good villain, similar to the likes of Valtor, who we'll get to next. But at the end of the day, he is just a mess. So because of that, we're going to have to go the lowest tier for Tritannus as well. I will put him, I think, high because he at least had potential and did do some things, but man, what a disappointment. All right, up next we have Valtor, who, what can I say, is automatically going to get into S tier, but let me explain why. So Valtor, if you didn't know for some crazy reason, is from season 3 of Winx Club. He's also in season 8, but we're not going to talk about that because, like I said, I'm only going to focus on the positive parts of these villains' careers. and season 8 was not a good look. But anyways, in season 3, we learned that Valtor was created by the Ancestral Witches. He was used by them in order to rule magics, and he took over planets in their name. Because of this, he was imprisoned by Bloom's parents in the Omega dimension, but thanks to the Trix, he is freed. So he uses them as minions and then decides to enact his evil plan once more. In order to get this done, he really does things from the inside in a really crafty and scary way. He manages to take down Celeria, Andros, and Arachleon. He also mutates Andros's guards. He blinds Aisha in order to teach her a lesson and send a message to the rest of the Winx. And in general, he just goes around granting people power in exchange for favors in order to better himself. He is a villain that all villains should aspire to be. He is super memorable, terrifying, but we love to love him because of just how charismatic and devious he is. He leaves a mark on every single person who's come across his story, and there is no way I could put him lower than S tier. All right, we're almost there, guys. Up next is Venomya, who you may not remember, but I'll catch you guys up to speed. Venomya is in season 2 of World of Winx, and she's a music critic. She tried to sabotage the Winx's music career and interfered with their concert. She also attended every single show that they did just to give them negative reviews. And you might be thinking, why is she up here? That doesn't sound that bad. But it turns out there's a reason why she's been going this far in order to ruin the Winx's good name. As it turns out, spoilers by the way, Venomya is actually a witch named Baba Yaga, and she declares war on the Winx in the very final moments of the Season 2 World of Winx finale. I was so looking forward to getting to see how this would play out. Basically, she despises fairies and believes that Earth is the rightful home to witches, so she wants to drive the Winx away. I think this would have been so cool to see, and I'm super disappointed that World of Winx didn't get continued so that we could see this play out. We didn't get to see that much of Venomya, besides her just being kind of rude for seemingly no reason at first, but it seemed like they were building up something really special. Plus, her design is gorgeous. So because of the potential that she has, and because she left me wanting something more, I am going to put her in B tier. All right, up next we have Vertigo, who is Bloom's nemesis. Because this is Bloom's evil counterpart, I do think that the writers paid the most attention to her. She gaslights Bloom and uses illusions in order to make her think she's going crazy. She loves breaking people's spirits and tries to break Bloom's psyche over time, which causes the Winx to sort of turn on her. And she even goes as far as to hide from the rest of the Winx so that Bloom thinks she's going crazy. I really loved the horror vibes that were being given with this character in the show, and I really wish that we could see more of that in the series. We kind of had that in the first few, like when the Trix sent the nightmare monster after the Winx, and it was really nice to see a return to form. I'm not really sure why they went the direction they did with Vertigo's design, but it does look cool. Unsurprisingly, I think I'm going to have to make her higher in the list than the other nemesis just because it is Bloom's, which means that she was developed more. But overall, I did kind of forget about this character. However, when I looked over the clips, it was clear that they did do a pretty darn good job of her being a villain. So because of that, she shall also go in B tier. All right, our last nemesis. This is Virus, Tecna's nemesis. She hacks into the security system at Sebastian's villa and uses gas to knock out the Winx. She then hacks into the Winx's source codes in order to turn them against Tecna, which once again was something that actually felt like it had stakes and must have really messed with Tecna's psyche quite a bit. I think she was only in like 2 episodes, but similar to Vertigo, they really set up the suspense super well for this character, and she actually did a really good job. The only reason why she was defeated is because Tecna confused her by being unpredictable, and since Virus is essentially a computer, that took her down. I think Virus was actually a pretty darn good villain. I did, like all the other nemesis, forget about her until I read through them all, but I think she was one of the best ones out of the bunch. So she's going B tier as well. All right. Finally, our last villain. Up next, we have the Wizards of the Black Circle, who are from Season 4, and it looks like they will be returning for the newest season of Winx. I think people are kind of split on the Wizards simply because Season 4 is a mixed bag. We get really cutesy and almost kind of childlike entertainment when it comes to Love and Pet, but then the Wizards are what made everything feel the complete opposite of that and super intense and even disturbing at times. I, however, hold these villains really, really close to my heart. I will say probably the biggest thing going against them is that they do feel kind of like one unit, and none of the individual members, besides Acheron maybe, are very memorable. Unlike the Trix, where I feel like each one stands on their own, I can't really say as much for the Wizards of the Black Circle. However, their actions more than make up for that. The Wizards are fairy hunters who steal magic from fairies by taking their wings, and they did this to all of the Earth fairies in order to rule Earth. They were actually successful for the most part. They stole the wings from pretty much every single fairy on Earth, and then they captured them and imprisoned them in their own castle after their wings were taken away, which take hundreds of years to grow back. After realizing that the job is not done, they return back to Earth in order to find the final Earth Fairy. When we first meet them in the series, it's already off to a pretty grim start because they storm Althea, and during the chaos, Dumon, who's a shapeshifter, turns into a wolf and attempts to eat Flora. But probably the evil act that they are most known for is what they did to the Winx and Specialists. The Wizards decide to pretend to be good and get on the good side of the terrestrial fairies and use the Winx in order to do so. And then when they finally reveal their evil plan, it's too late, and this is when Nabu loses his life. The Winx have an opportunity in order to bring him back using a gift that they received. However, Acheron sees this and crushes the gift in his own hand while mocking the Winx for doing so. This is probably the evil act that stuck with me the most in Winx Club because it had actual consequences that lasted permanently. Nabu is never brought back. And the idea of someone mocking you as they destroy the one chance you have to save someone, essentially killing them forever, is really, really evil. I think in terms of emotional weight, at least, they have been the most effective villains from that one action. And it's because of this that I personally really can't put them anywhere else but S tier. Okay, I'm gonna see if I need to do some rearranging real quick. Okay, I think that's more or less where I stand on things. So that's my final ranking of all the Winx Club villains. Hope you had fun following along. Let me know if you think I miscategorized someone in the comments. This list is very subjective, so I'm sure there's a lot of varying opinions out there. If you enjoyed the video, then please subscribe to join me on the journey to come. And if you'd like to support the channel, then check out my Patreon. Each patron gets a cute digital animated sticker I made, and now there's quick video teasers for anyone who joins regardless of tier. There's also other rewards like early video access and access to videos of mine that aren't on YouTube, like a top 10 list of the most emotional songs in Winx Club, for example. So please check that out if you're interested. I'll see you guys in the next one, and don't forget to keep a little magic in your life.